Hello, everyone. This is the show called Whiskey with the Werewolf Hunter. I'm Brian Easton. I'm the author of the Autobiography of a Werewolf Hunter book series and proprietor here at the Werewolf Bar. Come on in and stay a while. Welcome back, folks, for the February edition of our 8th season here on YouTube, where we discuss my book series and other Monster Hunter adjacent topics. We're glad you could stop by for a while this evening. The last month, as you may know, we did a compilation of segments from our 2025 season. So tonight, we'll mark our first actual original episode for the year. If you're new to the show, we start almost every episode with what we call our creature of the night, a whiskey to pair with the werewolf hunter. Now, as I have explained before, I do not consider myself a whiskey connoisseur by any means. And while I have been known to indulge in the occasional breakdown of palate and finish with descriptions like toasted caramel, dried fruit, or oakiness, I mostly just know what I like, and I call it as I taste it. And this month, because it's February, tonight's creature comes to us courtesy of Dr. T. Broussard of Baton Rouge, who is our in-house expert on the metaphysical, and who we will hear from just a little bit later. But for the last several years, he has also been the provider of our February creature. This year, Doc has sent us a bottle of Bibb and Tucker small batch bourbon, which weighs in at 92 proof or 46% alcohol. Now this is new to me, but after reading the label here and seeing that it was aged in Tennessee, I did a little digging and found out that the original whiskey sourced for Bibb and Tucker likely comes from Cascade Hollow, Tennessee, the folks that bring us George Dickel, which is, of course, my favorite brand of whiskey, hands down. Now, this isn't charcoal filtered like George Dickel is. Otherwise, we'd call it a Tennessee whiskey instead of a bourbon. So I'm very interested to find out how this compares to other Dickel products that I'm so fond of. Let's try it. Nice. It's got an actual old-fashioned style cork in there. You don't see that very often unless it's got a piece of wood attached to the other end of it these days. I like that. To Dr. T. That's pretty good stuff. It's a little more subtle, I think, than Dickel's Bottled in Bond, which I think would be its nearest comparison that comes to mind. I like the earthiness of it, and it's got a kind of a sweet finish, not like sugarly sweet, but kind of more like woody type of sweetness. Well done, Bibb and Tucker, and good choice, Doc. Thanks again for bringing this creature of the night into the Werewolf Bar tonight. That's good. So while we're on the subject of gifting, I want to show you something pretty special that came my way this last week. From time to time, someone will send me a gift of something. Tex Grebner, who does Tools of the Trade here on the show, has sent me samples of his bushcraft. Miles Booth over at MB Press has sent over various things, including bottles, like Dr. T. And I appreciate all that. And I try to return the favor if and when I can. But Tex, Miles, and Doc are people that I've known for years and worked with for a long time. But it's not that often that a reader that I've never met before sends me a present out of the blue. Well, that's just what happened. A gentleman named Robert Bonsall sent me an email that he had put together a knife fashioned after what he imagined the Bowie knife that Michael Winterfox gave to Sylvester might look like. And that knife features prominently in the original trilogy and whose origins are explained in the Winterfox journals. Here's what he sent me. So the blade is 7 inches, a little bit more. It's a buck 120, actually, which you've probably seen before with its factory black phenolic resin handle and aluminum pommel. But this one, as you see, has been replaced with a nice piece of crown stag. This is a working man's knife by any man's estimation. And I've admired the buck 120 for many years. And this one, you can see, still has its etchings as part of the Buck Pro line, which was an exclusive there for a while at Cabela's back in the 2000s or so, I believe. So as you can see, Robert has replaced the traditional black collar sheath with this brown woodsman style sheath, and that nice piece of crown stag, which is book accurate for the knife of Winter Fox has made. The whole piece, without that black signature handle, is almost unrecognizable as a buck 120. It's an incredible piece. Just a beautiful, functional custom knife. He's also included in this gift a hatchet, hand forged and made in Sweden by the Gransford Brooks. I'm sure that's not how it's pronounced, but the Gransford Brooks company in Sweden. It's got a hickory handle, and like I said, the head is completely hand forged, and it's got a steel collar, just one hell of a hatchet, and a natural companion to the knife for that old two-fisted tomahawk knife fighting style that Michael tried to teach Sylvester. Thank you again, Robert, for supporting my work and for this generosity here. These will occupy a special place in my collection. I'm much obliged to you, sir. Switching gears now, I want to take a step back to the early days of this show when I talked a lot about the influences for my characters and my writing in general. If you've been with us so long, you may recall that I named Cormac McCarthy's epic Western, Blood Meridian, as my favorite novel of all time. Not only that, but a major influence on how I want to tell a story. It's widely considered McCarthy's masterpiece by many readers. Its brutal content, though, and very grim, often grisly depiction of the American West is also contentious for some people. The story, if you don't know, follows the story of a gang of scalp hunters based on reality, based on true events, give or take a lie or two, in the 1850s, led by a man named Glanton, who is a historical figure, and they're working for the Mexican government for the taking of Apache scalps. A dangerous line of work, to say nothing of bloody. Among his own band of renegades is the Kid. No name, he's just known as the Kid in the book. An ex-priest by the name of Tobin, and the villainous, mysterious Judge Holden. Now, I've read and listened to this book more times than I can remember, and I have been just blown away by it every time. Now, there have been attempts, many attempts, down through the years to translate this book into a movie. Decades this has been going on. But because of the violence and sometimes it's just the nature of the story being told, it has been considered largely unfilmable by almost everybody that's tried it. Now, Cormac McCarthy himself, before he passed away, disagreed with that assumption, said that Blood Meridian is not unfilmable. You just need to have balls to do it. Be that as it may, at one time, Tommy Lee Jones was attached to it, Ridley Scott, and currently John Hillcoat. But between 2011 and 2015, James Franco came closest to shooting. He actually produced a test reel with Scott Glenn, Mark Pellegrino, Luke Perry, and Dave Franco before finally giving up on the project. Now, I saw that test reel footage back in the early 2010s, and then it vanished from the internet. All traces of it looked like it had been scrubbed, and I kicked myself for not downloading it when I had the chance. Fast forward to 2025, and just a few months ago, it resurfaced, and I snagged it. It is test footage, after all, and so the reel is very raw, Sound quality is poor, and for the most part, it's all very clunky and disjointed, as you might expect from an experimental shoot like this. Now, while some of the actors feel like just bodies to stand in, especially the judge, who is about 3 feet taller and a couple of 100 pounds larger than the actor playing the role, there are a couple who carry the footage by themselves. Scott Glenn plays the ex-priest Tobin, and Dave Franco plays the kid, in a conversation taken straight from the pages of Blood Meridian, discussing the menace and mystery of the judge. It's one of my favorite parts of the whole book, to tell you the truth, and these two guys do a great job with it, I think, for a test reel. I decided that I'm going to share it with you guys this evening, not because it's good, it's mostly not, because it represents that what may be the closest we come to getting my favorite novel on the screen. So take it for what it's worth. Here's James Franco's test footage of Blood Meridian.
You've done this before.
Not me.
Well, you than that, more so than me. There's little equality with the Lord's gifts. That's so. Look around you. Study the judge.
Yeah, I've done studied him.
Well, maybe he ain't to your liking. Fair enough. The man's a hand in anything. I never seen him turn to a task, but what he proved clever at it. He speaks Dutch.
Dutch?
He does, for I hears him do it. We cut a parcel of crazy pilgrims down off the Yano. The old man, the lead of them, he speaks right up in Dutch, like we were all this in Dutch land. And the judge give him right back. Glanton come near falling off his horse. We none of us knew him to speak it. Asked where he learned it. You know what he said?
What'd he say?
Said off a Dutchman. Yeah. The gifts of the Almighty are weighed and parceled out in a scale peculiar to himself. It's no fair accounting. And I don't doubt but what he be the first to admit it, and you put the query to him bold-faced.
Who?
The Almighty. The great hairless thing. You wouldn't think to look at him he could outdance the devil himself now, would you? God, the man is a dancer. You'll not take that away from him. And fiddle. He's the greatest fiddler I ever heard, and that's an end of it. The greatest. He can cut a trail, shoot a rifle, ride a horse, track a deer. He's been all over the world. Him and the governor, they set up till breakfast, and it was London this, Paris that, in 5 languages. You'd have give something to have heard him. And the governor, he's a learned man himself, he is, but the judge, oh, maybe it's the Lord's way of showing how little store he sets by the learned. Whatever could it mean to one who knows all? He's an uncommon love for the common man, and godly wisdom resides in the least of things. So, it may well be that the voice of the Almighty speaks most profoundly in such beings as live in silence themselves.
I never heard no voice.
When it stops, you'll know you've heard it all your life.
Is that right?
Aye. At night, when the horses are grazing, the company's asleep, who hears them grazing?
Don't nobody hear them if they're asleep.
Aye. And if they cease their grazing, who is it that wakes?
Every man.
Aye. Every man.
And the judge? Does the voice speak to him?
The judge.
I seen him before this.
Every man in this company claims to have encountered that sooty-souled rascal someplace else. He saved us all. I have to give him that. We come down off a little Colorado, we didn't have a pound of powder in the company. Pound. We'd not a dram hardly.
How come you'd have no powder?
Shot at all the savages. We were 38 men when we left Chihuahua City. We were 14 when the judge found us. Mortally whipped, on the run, lost most of the horses. Every man jack of us knew in that godforsook land someplace there was a draw, or a cul-de-sac, or perhaps just a pile of rocks, and there we'd be driven to a stand with his empty guns. But for the judge, give the devil his due. There was no place to run and no place to hide. We knew the bloody niggers was out there, because speaking for myself, that was already an abundance of information. We didn't need more. At sunrise, we looked to be our last. And then, about the meridian of that day, we come upon the judge. There he sat, on a rock. In the middle of the greatest desert you'd ever want to see. Now, what do you reckon it was in them mountains we set out? How come he know of it? Where to find it? How to make use of it? And that was the judge.
one deserted last night. That's the one we're going for, gentlemen. Right there.
We ain't supposed to hide in them caves. That fool's led us to our death.
Nature.
Nitro, boys. Fill your bags. Fill your bags.
Circle around for 48 hours, then return here.
I said I'd never set eyes on that man again. I thought Glenn would leave him. Well, if the heathens didn't know already, they know by now. We don't have any powder.
differently. Yeah. About a mile. And piss! Piss for the love of Christ! You settle down. Keep pissing, boy.
Keep pissing! Piss, you fuckers, piss! Piss for your lives! Piss, man, piss! Fucking piss, you cocksuckers! Piss for your fucking lives! All right, gentlemen. Bring me the mixture. Don't strike no fire on them flints.
Put them in the pocket, gentlemen. Put them in the pocket right there. All right, Captain Glanton. Charge that old swivel bore of yours up. Let's see what manner of thing we got here. Fire it straight down the maw of that thing. Don't let them see you. Ne pas vi entrega! Pas vi entrega! Estoy solo! Todos los muertos!
first I ever saw it. Aye. He's the thing to study.
What's he a judge of?
What's he the judge of?
Yeah, what's he a judge of?
Hush, lad. Man will hear you. His ears like a fox.
As I mentioned, John Hillcoat, who directed The Road, also by Cormac McCarthy, is now attached to the project with the screenplay being written by John Logan, the writer for Penny Dreadful. But according to the best report I can find, this latest effort was still moving forward as of this time last year. And that's the latest update that I was able to find. And Hillcoat was sending in pictures on social media, just kind of at random, of sets in Utah, or not sets, but landscapes scenes from Utah, and studio produced gore, kind of hinting that this is what we're doing behind the scenes, and suggesting that pre-production is still progressing. Hopefully, since Hillcoat successfully adapted The Road to screen, which is also a very bleak novel by Cormac, he'll have better luck with Blood Meridian than his predecessors. I'll keep my fingers crossed, but I'm not going to hold my breath. Well, I'm going to have another taste of this Bibbs and Tucker that Doc provided for us tonight. And then we get ready to hear from him regarding Thiess of Livonia, a historical werewolf with some important distinctions. Here's Dr. T's Doc Talk Shop and your latest edition of Werewolves Who Were.
Hello and welcome to Doc Talk Shop as for Whiskey with the Werewolf. Tonight, I want to discuss the famous case, a case mentioned in the mythos of the Werewolf Hunter by Brian Peterson. The case of Thiess of Livonia, or Thiess of Livonia, or Old Thesis, if you like. Now, there is a book on the subject out there, The Werewolf of Livonia, that I would highly recommend. And to a degree, this statement of mine is a book report, if you will, on that book. And to that end, I'll say, for an academic study, for a historical study, this book is excellent. Now, for our purposes, I want to address the claims of these from a mythological and anthropological point of view, as though his claims were what he actually believed. Now, note, I'm presenting this as a paradigmic examination. I'm not saying I believe any of this or that anyone should, but based on the records we have, Thiess presented himself as a werewolf that fought on the side of the angels, which was very evocative of certain witch traditions or shamanic traditions in the area. that echo those in Hungary and many other places. You often have these examples of these midnight battles between the forces of good and the forces of evil. The hounds of God versus the hounds of hell, kind of thing. Now, what's interesting about Thiess is he, as far as we can tell, freely admitted to being, for lack of a better term, a white werewolf, a good werewolf, and uh, very much responsible for bringing crops to fruition and things like that, and fighting the bad guys. The point of this is, you can look at this as a possibility of the survival of a pagan tradition attempting to graft someone to the ascending Judeo-Christian paradigm. His stuff is going out the door, so he tries to hitch his wagon to the church. Unfortunately, the church isn't really in for that level of adaptation, so good werewolf or not, we're gonna kill you. That's just kind of how it was. Now, one of the more curious elements in the story of Thiess is that after he was initiated by drinking from a communal jug, he was made to travel across the sea. Now, in many shamanic traditions around the world, you'll find traveling across a body of water or a faraway land as being a metaphor for the other world, the spirit world, call it what you will. In many European traditions, you'll also find things like passing through the Vale of Tears. And you'll also find the land of the spirits being conflated or related to the land of the dead. So you have a kind of interplay between the gods, the dead, and the infernal regions. So what you could be having was these falling into a kind of trance, having essentially these wild trips, and believing that he was fighting evil werewolves and demons and such, and he was really on the side of the angels. He's Captain America gone werewolf, which did happen in the comics, if you will. And he was mistaken. This could have been because of the use of drugs or a psychotic episode. There are elements in the account of Thiess that are somewhat reminiscent of Muhammad's night journey in Islam. He went into a trance state, hopped onto a donkey creature named Barak, and Muhammad was shown the world, the spirit world, and so on. It's very similar to what Thiess describes. The legal factor in all this is that Thiess recounted all this in a court of law pretty freely from everything we've read. I mean, they asked him, they put the question to him, and he put all this forward pretty freely. That is different than a lot of cases, because a lot of cases we have supposed werewolves confessing under torture, which, as we know, is not a reliable way of extracting information. Now, torture should not be confused with pressure, but torture itself, people make up all kinds of stuff to avoid or not make it stop. So that's why it's not reliable. Threat, on the other hand, him bring out valid information, and because the person actually heard, they can verify the information, come back, and then apply more pressure if need be. Point being, the detail that these gave, the allusions to pagan survival, or at least his attempt at a pagan Christian cosmology, this was quite different in the annals of lycanthropic jurisprudence, if you like. Very similar to the original teenage werewolf, Tex Grebner, as some refer to him. And again, him believing he was on the side of the angels was not very convincing to the church, because, for the church, if they don't give you approval, what you think about it doesn't really matter much. So, even though he thought he'd get away with it for fighting the good fight, the powers that be disagreed. You could make the argument that Thiess represents an unconscious, almost Protestant, if you will, ecstatic shamanic tradition, because he's bringing forward this and not seeking the approval of the church, and bypassing the church by going directly into the divine and saying, I'm on the side of the divine. And the influence of the case of these has been a contributing factor in certain modern lycanthropic ideas of, werewolves being the enemies of vampires, and there being good werewolves versus bad, and that kind of thing. So, whereas in many French cases, you have a lone individual or a cut-off family resorting to lycanthropy to hunt and so forth for survival, for food, Thiess takes it to a whole other level. You can almost say a grandiose level, and makes himself a lycanthropic superhero. That being said, let's say the book on the Blood Meridian werewolf is great. You should get it. And as always, good hunting, mind the moon, and good night.
Thank you, Dr. T. I like the idea of the good werewolf being a pagan leftover, trying to survive in a world now largely run by the church. The problem is, as Doc points out, is that the church isn't going along with it. Also, as Doc mentioned at the beginning of his presentation, I used a fictionalized version of Thiess the Livonian in The Lineage, the last book of the original trilogy. Now, according to the historic testimony of Thiess himself, he had been a beggar who became a werewolf after he was drunk a toast by a rascal. I ran with that idea and made it so that this rascal in question had been a werewolf himself, who had actually bled into the jug of altar wine that he'd stolen and gave Thiess to drink. And with the wolf's blood mingling with the sacrament, it fundamentally altered the nature of the birthmark in the old man, restoring him to vitality, but making him a hound of God instead of a servant of evil. I wrote Thiess how I thought a pious and patriarchal Old Testament type figure might behave as a werewolf. Righteous in his devotion to the Lord, a scourge to the evil that he struck down, and having many wives and always looking for more. The image that you saw right after the werewolves who were Bumper is of the tarot card of old Thiess as the Hierophant from the lineage. Thanks as always to Dr. Broussard and his contributions, not only in terms of this segment, but also the bottle of Bib and Tucker's that I'm going to enjoy. And I'm going to have one more taste of that before we leave. Last call. And many thanks to you for joining us tonight. Come to the web and visit us at werewolfhunter.com. See all the links to the books and the various mayhem in the description below. I'm working on the Winter Fox Journals Book 3 this year, by the way, as I have mentioned. So be sure to like and subscribe for updates before you leave the Werewolf Bar tonight. And until next time, happy Valentine's Day and Lupercalia, happy hunting, and mind the moon.